Today's legendary artist wrote or co-wrote over 24 hits for other people before she got a chance to record her own record. The only problem is she hated the sound of her own voice. Hated it. She was criticized by some in the industry about it, saying it was too hoarse, too thin. But one night, a legendary singer-songwriter put her on the spot and pushed her to sing a hit she'd written for a famous group. She killed it. This opened the door for a solo record that would rival any artist or band in the 70s. Cool stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If music moves your soul, you're going to want to join up and see our daily content. Join a true music community just like it was in the glory days of MTV and VH1 when they cared about music, by subscribing right now below. And even more commentary, more videos, more interviews, check us out on Patreon to be a part of this virtual music museum. You're about to hear one of the great stories in music history. Sometimes it's hard to believe. Calling Carole King precocious would be a gross understatement. I mean, the destiny of her greatness could barely await her adolescence. By the time she was just 15 years old, she was already a promising songsmith working at the famed Brill Building in Times Square. At 16, she graduated from high school and enrolled in Queens College in New York. She met and fell instantly in love with a young lyricist named Gerry Goffin, and the couple married when Carole was just 17 and Gerry was a mere 20. At 18, she'd co-written a #1 pop smash with Gerry penning the words and Carole scripting the music. The songwriting duo of Goffin and King became one of the most prodigious in popular music history. I mean, when Lennon and McCartney began to take over the universe with the Beatles, and they were asked what they aspired to be, they answered that they wanted to be the Goffin King of the UK. The Goffin King partnership composed 24 top 40 pop hits, many of which are standards that have been covered many times over, beyond their original recordings. After 10 years of marriage, Carole and Gerry divorced in the late 60s. Carole moved from New York City to Los Angeles to start a new life, professionally and personally. She bought a home in the Hollywood Hills and assembled a group of musicians together to form the band The City, but it faded away in less than a year after recording just one album. By 1970, Carole met James Taylor and became the pianist in his touring band. Now, on one fateful night in 1970, JT surprised Carole by telling her before the show that she was going to do a solo performance of Up on the Roof, one of the classic pop hits that she, of course, co-wrote with her ex-husband, Gerry Goffin. It's hard to believe right now, but King was terrified of the idea of singing on stage in front of a live audience, and she gasped when JT told her about his plan. Carole hated the sound of her own voice. Can you believe that? I mean, after being told by people in the music business that the voice was too hoarse, too thin. Of course, Taylor knew otherwise. JT's wily influence broke Carole of her fears, and she ended up performing Up on the Roof to a sold-out audience at her alma mater, Queens College in Flushing, New York in 1970, and of course, the audience went crazy.
When this old world starts getting me down.
It was a watershed moment for Carole King that soon opened the door to another dimension of her enormous talent. She had the name, but it was time for the world to hear her voice, the voice of Carole King. On all those big hits she co-authored with Gerry Goffin, Carole wrote the music and Gerry wrote the words. She could create catchy melodies in a flash. She did it repeatedly as a hit machine for hire at the Brill Building. She was that gifted. But could she write lyrics? Carole signed with Lou Adler to record on his Ode label. Her solo debut as a vocalist was the 1970 release Writer, a record that included Carole's solo renditions of songs that she'd written with Gerry Goffin, except for 2 tracks that included lyrics from her future collaborator, Tony Stern. Writer received a warm reception by the critics, but the LP sold moderately at best. It was her second release that detonated an explosion of inspired language that made it clear that not only could Carole King write lyrics with her music, she could light up the world with a voice that would forever change the role of women in popular music. Carole's second solo LP was to be titled Tapestry. The operative word to describe the vibe Carole and Lou Adler wanted for Tapestry was simplicity. Adler wanted the record to sound like Carole was performing for some friends in her living room. Accessible, vulnerable, personal. Carole joined Adler and an all-star cast of musicians at A&M Studio, the legendary facility built by Charlie Chaplin in 1917, in the heart of Hollywood to record Tapestry. There were definitely spiritual forces at work during that pivotal time at A&M Studios. Joni Mitchell was in Studio A recording her Milestone Blue album. The Carpenters were in Studio C recording their third album, highlighted by their hit Superstar and Rainy Days and Mondays. And Carole and her team were in Studio B. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall? For her second album, Carole used songs that she had demos for at the time. Nothing special in Carole's mind. Just songs that she had been working on. Watching the story come out of her in the songs on Tapestry was liberating for Carole. Somewhat surprised her, actually. She had no idea, no hunch that the album she was making would have such historical consequence. Usually how it is. The ambiance for Tapestry was branded on the album cover to capture Carole's inviting affability and probity, with Carole lounging barefoot near a window at her home in Laurel Canyon, holding a piece of tapestry that she personally hand-stitched. Her cat Telemachus reluctantly posing for added coziness. Now let's get into those wonderful, just unassuming songs on Tapestry. The first cut on Tapestry was the boldly erotic track, I Feel the Earth Move, a libido-freeing release for Carole King, exhibiting yet another hidden talent she didn't know she had.
Hey, I feel the earth move under my feet.
I Feel the Earth Move was a dynamic change from the guitar-oriented singer-songwriter sound that most people would expect from a writer-turned-vocalist like Carole King.
You're right.
Carole's vocal on the track torrents into a blast of unrelenting joy, easing the rush to an almost whisper with her all over rapture, then blasting back with the ecstasy of losing control right to her very soul, eventually tumbling down.
Lose control, down to my very soul.
I love the way Carole raises her octave when she sings Tumbling in the song's coda.
Tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
Adler made a shrewd move in the arrangement of I Feel the Earth Move, giving the song a prevailing piano groove that showcased Carole's inspired piano playing. The second track on Tapestry is So Far Away. One of the greatest songs ever. Referred to as the On the Road Again ballad, Carole's mesmerizing brooding of a world that is becoming increasingly disconnected. With a profoundly enduring line, doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? So Far Away was written by Carole during a transient part of American culture when everyone seemed to be traveling, looking for enlightenment.
Anybody stay in one place anymore?
Carole was transparent about how traveling around gets her down and lonely.
Traveling around sure gets me down and lonely.
So Far Away was the fourth single off Tapestry that climbed to number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. And like I said, one of Carole King's signature songs. So many covers of Rod Stewart has a really good one, but nothing compares to Carole's.
But you're so far away.
The third track is It's Too Late. It was one half of a double A-sided single with I Feel the Earth Move on the flip side that launched the airplay domination of Tapestry at radio, shooting all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and owning the top position for 5 consecutive weeks. It was also number 1 adult contemporary. It's Too Late is a heart-wrenching paragon that is one of the most powerfully realized ballads of the rock era.
And it's too late, baby, now it's too late.
The lyrics for It's Too Late were touchingly composed by Tony Stern, a poet-painter that became an important collaborator with Carole and a trusted friend. Tony wrote It's Too Late expressing the personal pain and strenuous deliberation that she went through while dealing with a once potent relationship that had died. Another one of the great songs of all time. I love It's Too Late. Carole, of course, no stranger to heartache herself, experiencing the lightness and the irreparable darkness of the volatile marriage that she had with Gerry Goffin.
You look so unhappy and I feel like...
That's what made It's Too Late such a powerfully emotive track. The story was penned with bittersweet truth by a real-life heroine and interpreted by a singer that, too, crawled through the wreckage. The wreckage of a broken romance. The authenticity is just absolutely riveting. The soprano sax was performed by Curtis Amy, who among his many credits played the jazzy sax solo on Touch Me by The Doors. He was also the musical director for the Ray Charles Orchestra for several years. When praising the sheer perfection of It's Too Late, we got to give special recognition to the magician Danny Korchmar. We just talked about him just recently. Cooch's guitar solo on It's Too Late is truly one of the most brilliant, intuitive performances by a session musician, period. For the solo on It's Too Late, Danny was instructed to play something melancholy. Korchmar allowed himself to feel the music, disregarding the chord sheet in front of him and absorbing what Carole was playing on the piano. Cooch's solo has a raw, unscripted caliber that magnified the song's transcendent sublimity. Home Again is another honest outpouring from Carole King, longing to be home with a gorgeous piano solo performance in the bridge. And then, of course, there's Beautiful, just an invigorating track about self-motivation and believing in oneself.
That you're beautiful as you think.
It was also the title of the hit Broadway musical portraying the early life and career of the revered Carole King. Next is the bluesy sentimentality of Way Over Yonder, featuring a soulful supporting vocal by Mary Clayton, who was married to Curtis Amy, saxophone as I mentioned. Mary was the singer who delivered that incredible vocal. With Mick Jagger over the chorus, Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones, one of the great songs of all time.
Trouble's gonna lose me.
Perry Steinberg adroitly grooved on the double bass, intersecting the superb musicianship throughout the track. Tapestry included Carole's version, of course, You've Got a Friend. One of the most endearing examples of Carole's natural flair for lyricism.
Yeah, you've got a friend.
The title was inspired by the line, I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, in James Taylor's song Fire and Rain.
I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend.
Although Carole said in an interview in, I believe, 1972, she didn't write this song with the idea of James Taylor singing the song or anyone else in particular. Taylor loved the song when he heard Carole's original and asked her if he could record a rendition of his own. Carole was very happy to oblige.
All you've got to do is call on.
How appropriate that the artist who inspired the song would record what would become really one of his signature songs. You've Got a Friend was a #1 smash for James Taylor in 1971, and it became one of his 3 signature songs. I mean, along with the aforementioned Fire and Rain, of course, Sweet Baby James. JT's cover of You've Got a Friend is arguably the seminal version, but Carole's original envelops her shyness and warmth that was a trademark of her captivating charm.
And soon I will be there.
Tapestry engineer Hank Sicolo always strived to capture what he called the quality Carole had to her voice. Sicolo described Carole's singing style as warm with an edge, which is right on the money. Where You Lead, the second writing collaboration with Tony Stern, is another stellar track on Tapestry. Now, Carole had written the music and most of the lyrics when she asked Tony to help her complete the tune by writing the song's bridge.
Follow anywhere that you tell me.
The song first appeared on Tapestry, but was later a top 40 hit for Barbra Streisand as a studio version in '71 and a live version in 1972. In 2000, Carole teamed up with her eldest daughter, Louise Goffin, to record a duet of Where You Lead to be used as the theme for the TV series Gilmore Girls.
Where you lead, I will follow.
And now we come to the new interpretation of the Goffin King smash, Will You Love Me Tomorrow, on Tapestry. The original version of Will You Love Me Tomorrow, written in 1960 and performed by the Shirelles. It was the first #1 single for the prolific songwriting duo. It was also the first time a single performed by an all-female African-American singing act hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. History made right there. Carole's solo rendition of Will You Love Me Tomorrow, it's just entrenched by gentle fragility. The Tapestry arrangement with Carole's vulnerability, it makes the song, to me, more personal and empathetic. Of course, both versions incredible.
Will you still love me tomorrow?
The Tapestry adaptation also features comforting background vocals from the ardent James Taylor.
You say that I'm the only.
Next up is Smackwater Jack, an aspirational folktale about the confrontation of outlaw Smackwater Jack and Big Jim the Chief. It's one of 3 songs on Tapestry that was a carryover of the Goffin King songwriting phenomenon. Smackwater Jack is followed by the retrospective title track Tapestry.
Within my tapestry along the rutted road.
And an updated version of You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, the last track on the album and the final Goffin King collaboration. Now, a little bit of history on You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. It was written especially for the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. It all started when Atlantic Records executive Jerry Wexler saw Carole King on a street corner in Manhattan and shouted out to her that he needed a Natural Woman song for Aretha's new album, actually. Carole and Jerry went home that night and wrote You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman and submitted the song to Jerry Wexler the very next day. Since the title was spawned from his street side request, the couple actually gave him songwriting credit on the future classic that Aretha took all the way to #8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and #2 on the R&B chart in 1967.
Feel like a natural woman.
Natural Woman it's just a fitting end to Carole King's Tapestry, the Mona Lisa of the rock and roll era, if you will. Released in February 1971, Tapestry was an instant sensation. The sentiment and genuineness of the music established a deep emotional connection with listeners. It was one of those records that resonated with a generation. It was cathartic, relatable, and of course empowering, particularly for women.
I'm no longer doubtful of what I'm living.
But it's one of those records that reached across the aisle to everybody. We all have those albums that our parents listened to all the time that really became such a backbone of our childhood and growing up. They not only shape us, but they become deep connections, the ties that bind us to our fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, all that. This record was that for me. I remember my parents listening to it. How about you? The album was intended to be the coming out party for Carole as a solo artist, ending up being the album that redefined the role of women in music and one of the all-time best-selling LPs, moving more than 25 million copies since its release in 1971. It was the first album to reach certified diamond status, 10 million units, by a female artist. Tapestry was #1 in America for 15 consecutive weeks and stayed inside the top 200 album chart for 6 straight years. Not too shabby for an album that cost only $22,000 to make. The album was honored with 4 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, Best Pop Vocal Performance Female, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year. Carole King being the first woman to win that award. The monumental success of Tapestry couldn't have happened, in my opinion, to a more deserving artist. Carole King is an amazing person. Has always put others before her own needs. Everybody she's ever worked with adores her and has tremendous respect for her talent, her integrity, and her character. Among many other timeless classics over a storied odyssey, Carole King gave us Tapestry. Just a breathtaking triumph that has inspired 5 decades of fans and artists. And to think, Carole didn't have an inkling of how successful the album would be. When asked if she thought the album was going to be a colossal hit, revered by generation after generation, Carole responded in her sweet, shy, humble manner with an adorable, surviving Brooklyn accent. Who knew? We all know now. Leave us a comment about Carole King and Tapestry, this life-changing album. What are your memories of it? Tell us about the songs, your thoughts. I want to hear from you. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. The glasses I wear every day. I've got like 12 pairs of these things. They're amazing. Go to Zenni.com, design your own. You can do a virtual 3D try-on before you get the glasses, and you're going to pay less for it than you would a vinyl record. It's amazing. Also, if you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe and get this life-changing album, Tapestry, on vinyl below. Actually, the 50th anniversary version I've read is going to be coming out soon. So look for that. Maybe we'll do a review on it. And check us out on Patreon for even more videos. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe out there.